Okay.
Chairman?
Yes,
Chairman, I'm having difficulty accessing the paperwork for the meeting. I wonder would it be possible for the clerk to resend it to the SharePoint?
Yes, that's grand.
yes. Well, okay, Clerk will do that now, Alan. Thank you for letting us know.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
We should now be in open session. Can I inform members that the draft minutes of the meeting held on the 7th of July 2021 are pages 22 and 27 of the meeting pack? Can I ask if you're content that the minutes are a true reflection of the proceedings of the meeting? I wasn't there, so I'd have to ask yourselves to. That'd be enough.
I think there's two of us there, if I remember.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm satisfied with it.
Okay, thank you. So members, Jim, yourself or William, happy to sign the minutes? Yes, okay.
Okay.
Okay. So the next item of business, matters arising. I inform members that there are two items pertaining to the same issue under matters arising at pages 29 to 32 of the meeting pack. Items 1 and 2 are responses from NIPSO and the NIAO to the committee's request for comments on the relevant clauses of the Department of Finance Financial Reporting, Departments and Public Bodies Bill. I ask members if you are content to forward the responses to the Committee for Finance as the committee responsible for the committee stage of this bill. All agreed?
Great.
Right.
Right, thank you, members. Okay, and now on to the review of the governance and accountability arrangements for the Northern Ireland Audit Office and the Northern Ireland Public Services Ombudsman. Oral evidence from the local government auditor. Can I remind members to refer to pages 34 to 48 of the meeting pack for relevant papers for this evidence session, and also remind you that the committee agreed to invite the local government auditor to give evidence as part of its review of the governance and accountability arrangements for the NIAO and NIPSO, in particular the proposal that a single auditor for the public sector be created. And can I inform members that Ms Colette Keane, local government auditor, and Mr Rodney Allen, Chief Operating Officer of the NIAO, will attend today's meeting to give evidence as part of the committee's ongoing review. So therefore, if Spotlight will allow broadcasting, I welcome to the meeting Ms Colette Keane, local government auditor and director of the NIAO, and also Rodney Allen, Chief Operating Officer of the NIAO. Okay, you can hear me okay. Is Colette coming in remotely?
Thank you. Both here in person. Both witnesses here in person.
I just can't see you. That's what's wrong. 2 seconds. Yeah. I can see Mr. Allen, but I can't see.
Likewise.
Yeah. If broadcasting could ensure that's the case, I'm going to invite Colette Keane to make her opening statement and to welcome you to the committee today, and thank you in advance for providing evidence to this session. So with that said, if you would kindly make your opening statement, and if broadcasting would ensure that we could see Ms Keane as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. I'll pass it over to Rodney first of all, and then back to me.
Yeah, if it's okay, Chairman, I'll offer a few preliminary thoughts and then come back to Colette.
Yes, that's fine.
First of all, thank you and members. At your meeting back on the 7th of July, the CNAG and our board chairperson gave the committee some evidence to inform your review of our governance arrangements. And they talked to you about various matters that were included in our written submission to the committee: board membership, the external auditor appointment, CNAG's appointment, the interface between local government and central government audits, and how the existing advisory board works, amongst other things. So in terms of the local government auditor, we need to go back a wee bit. Prior to 2003, the local government audit function actually sat within the former Department for Environment, and the auditor and the associated staff at that time were civil servants. But the Audit and Accountability Order of 2003 changed that, and it brought the local government audit function into the Audit Office at that time. So over the subsequent 18 years, the amalgamation of those functions, along actually with health services or health service audit, meant that the NIAO, we are effectively now a one-stop audit shop for the whole of the NI public sector. So we apply one set of auditing standards and one methodology, regardless of whether our audits are in the local government or indeed the central government sector. There are, though, some differences, and probably the key one that I would flag up is that when the auditor forms ultimately their opinion on an audit, in local government it does not include a regularity opinion, and that only applies in central government. So under the current legislation, members, it's the Minister for the Department of Communities who may, with the consent of the CNAG, designate a member of Audit Office staff as the local government auditor. And once designated, that person carries out their audit function in the statutory way, along with their other responsibilities. They exercise their own professional judgment and they're independent of the department and of the CNAG. So, although we are indeed a one-stop audit shop, we still have two public auditors in the CNAG and the local government auditor. So our submission to the committee chairman has suggested that there should in the future be one public auditor, consistent with the position in Wales, and we've asked that the committee give some consideration to that. Kieran has been the CNAG since 2009, and during that time there have been 4 post holders in the position of local government auditor, and Colette is currently designated as the LGA. And on that point, I will hand over to Colette to give you some more specific points on the role of the local government auditor.
Thank you. So the role of the local government auditor, the local government auditor has the statutory responsibility to give an independent opinion on the local government body's financial statements, as well as a true and fair opinion. This includes a review of whether the local government bodies have in place proper arrangements to secure economy, efficiency and effectiveness in their use of resources. There are currently 15 local government bodies, the 11 councils, the NILGOS, the pension scheme, the Local Government Staff Commission, Park 21 and the North West Regional Waste Management Group. The local government auditor has also additional audit responsibilities in respect of performance improvement duties of councils, which were introduced in 2014 with the 2014 Act, and these are carried out normally on an annual basis. In addition to the financial and performance improvement audits, the local government auditor has a number of additional powers and duties afforded under legislation. These include the ability to undertake comparative and other studies to make recommendations for improving economy, efficiency and effectiveness. And we're currently undertaking a review of planning functions for both Council and the Department for Infrastructure under these powers, and plan to undertake further studies in the future. Members will also be aware that the Minister for Communities has directed an extraordinary audit of the accounts of Causeway Coast and Glensborough Council, concentrating on land disposals and easements and related asset management policies and procedures, and that audit is ongoing. In terms of the way the audits are carried out, we carry out our audits in accordance with international auditing standards and the NIAO audit approach, which is used for all of our audits, including both central and local government. The local government audits are within the same quality assurance mechanism as for all audits within our office. As Rodney has mentioned, the one-stop shop for public audit across Northern Ireland benefits us greatly, as we're able to see the complete picture of funding flows from central to local government, and also to consider similar issues within public sector bodies. Where issues arise in local government, we're also able to discuss with others within the office, and indeed wider with our colleagues in other audit agencies. I am also a member of the CIPFILASIC board, which is made up of local government finance from across the UK and representatives of the 4 audit agencies, and whose role is to oversee the development of local government accounting guidance. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much to you both for those opening statements. Can I invite members to ask questions of our witnesses? I'll start with Mr. William Irwin.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman. In relation to there's currently 2 public auditors And I think you did say, and a difficulty hearing, especially just at the last there, was quite hard to pick up. But you do recommend that there should be one public auditor. That it would be bringing us into line. That's the same as the rest of the regional assemblies in the UK. Is that right?
That would bring us into line, Mr. Irwin, with Wales. They operate in a similar situation.
Okay. Scotland is not then?
No, the arrangements in Scotland and England are different. We set that out in the paper to the committee, but I suppose in relation to the circumstances in Wales, we feel that's more directly comparable.
Okay. What are the benefits of that, or do you see benefits, or is it just bringing us into line?
No, the benefits at the minute you would have, we would have some work which would be cross-cutting. Colette makes reference, for instance, to the planning study, which would cut across local government and central government. There would be more synergy if you had one public auditor making singular judgments rather than split functions as you have at the moment. Now, the history, it was more because of the kind of dichotomy between ratepayers' monies and taxpayers' monies, but I think that thinking is somewhat outdated now.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, and Mr. Chambers?
I'm fine, Chair.
Okay, Mr. Alistair?
Yeah, you tell us that it's a one-stop audit shop, but as was very clear from our last session, it's not a one-stop shop when it comes to oversight and challenge, because we discovered that the advisory board has no status in respect of the local government side of auditing. So where is the oversight and challenge for the local government auditor presently?
The advisory board, maybe I'm picking up wrong, Mr. Alistair, the advisory board, its function in respect of both the CNAG and the local government auditor is exactly the same.
The evidence given to us on the 7th of July was quite contrary to that, because I quizzed this issue and was told that the advisory board did not extend to the local government auditor. If you look at the Hansard, it's very, very clear. So why are we being told something different today?
That may, I wonder, Mr. Alistair, is that in relation to the judgments? Because the advisory board has really no role in relation to ultimately the audit judgments that are formed either by the CNAG or by the local government auditor.
Well, I invite you, Mr. Allen, to read the Hansard from, I think it was the 7th of July, and you'll see that this issue was explored. And it seems to me we got very different answers from what you're giving us today.
I was in attendance at that meeting, Mr. Alistair. The advisory board has the same, to the best of my knowledge now, I'm struggling, unless Colette can contradict me, I'm struggling to see the differences. The advisory board oversees the whole workings of the audit office, but obviously it doesn't get involved in the decision-making process on audits of either of the public auditors, because that would fetter their independence. Do you think
that's the same as what we were told at our last meeting?
It perhaps provides more clarity.
Or contradiction? When you said that the local government auditor doesn't issue regulatory opinions, just explain to us what a regulatory opinion is.
Yeah, it's a regularity opinion. Regularity. So when you conduct an audit in central government, you give an opinion on a true and fair view, and you also give an opinion on the regularity of the transactions contained in the financial statements. So regularity, in simple terms, if I may, is essentially that you're confirming or otherwise that the income and expenditure has been used for the purposes intended by the Assembly.
And that doesn't happen in local government?
There's no equivalent opinion in local government.
Is that not a massive hole?
I think,
in terms of auditing?
Certainly not in terms of auditing. I mean, I think you could maybe, I think there's a discussion there in terms of governance and accountability, but you'll appreciate that the funding stream is clearly different, where most local government funding is for
Historically,
ratepayers.
why is there no regularity opinion?
I guess it's because the regularity opinion is when the CNAG gives a certificate, it goes to the Assembly and advises the Assembly that the income and expenditure has been spent in line with the intentions of the Assembly or otherwise. You don't have that relationship between local government and the Assembly. So a regularity opinion would be irrelevant.
That ratepayers' money would be spent in a regular fashion as anticipated.
Yes, and we will, and again, Colette can maybe speak more thoroughly in this than I. We will test for this for regularity tests, but the opinion doesn't exist in the local government arena.
Yeah, I mean, our audit approach is exactly the same for both central and local government. So when we are looking, for example, at expenditure made by councils or local government bodies, we'd be looking for that those have been made in accordance with some authority. So that could be the authority of the, mostly should be the authority of the council. So the council have agreed a certain expenditure, and we check back to make sure that that is the case. The difference here is that we don't actually give an explicit opinion on that.
But it's not just a technical difficulty. The opinion is of some standing and worth, is it not?
Well, I think the opinion of true and fair is a fairly high level of assurance for members of council who we report to.
Positions consistent with other regions. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's consistent with the rest of the UK. There's no regularity opinion on any of the local authority accounts.
Just explain one or two other things to me. As local government auditor, Mrs. Kane, do you have your own staff?
No, well, we use staff from across the office, and that's built into the legislation, actually, that we're able to use staff from across the Northern Ireland Audit Office. So the staff would, would do probably, most of the staff will do both central and local government audits.
And do you do anything outside of local government?
Yes, I have a portfolio from central government as well.
So the local government auditors, a bit of a sideshow in the audit office?
No, absolutely not. I mean, most of my work would be local government, but I also have, for example, I have one department, Department for Infrastructure. And I also carry out audits for north-south bodies as well. Now, that would be a lot less central government work than my colleagues at director level. So most of my work is local government.
So if you had a single public auditor, how would local government be handled within that?
So I think the arrangement might be, but this is obviously to be agreed in the structure. The CNAG and the local government auditor would be one person effectively, and then you'd have directors below that, directors like myself, who would potentially take the lead on particular council audits and central government as well.
And just to come in, the final judgments then, Mr. Allister, would rest entirely with one individual.
Whereas now the judgments on local government issues rest with Mrs. Kane.
Yeah, that's
and not the Auditor General.
That's consistent with the way it's always been.
Yes.
It's always been, isn't always the best, is it?
No, I think that's fair, and that's why we would flag up maybe that there are merits in the committee considering the suggestion of a single auditor.
Yes.
Which would then deal with the anomaly of how the local government auditor is appointed as well.
That's correct, yes. The legislation would have to be changed.
Okay, Mr. Allison.
Thanks.
Okay, thanks very much for taking those questions, Rodney. And Colette, I just have one question. I am particularly interested in this discussion around a single auditor for the public sector. Colette, what would you see as the advantages or disadvantages of that happening?
I think Rodney has already indicated about the synergy, really between local and central government. We do have that because we're a relatively small office, but if it was within one person, I suppose the links between central and local government would be easier to make, and
Yes.
one person would see them more clearly. We still have the same standards. We'll always have those same standards when conducting audits, so that won't change. But it certainly, I think, just to have a figurehead who is that one person over local and central would probably, for a country the size of ours, would probably make it more efficient and effective.
Yeah, just to add to that, Chairman, I think that the singularity of one professional judgment former with a kind of a horizon across both sectors and a connection back into the political landscape and the cross-cutting subjects that we do would prove very beneficial.
Okay, thanks for that, Rodney. Okay, well, listen, thank you both for being here and for taking questions from members. It is appreciated.
Thank you, Chairman.
Okay.
Members.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, members, are you content that all necessary evidence has been gathered to commence deliberations going forward?
Chair, could I just make one comment?
You can.
On the 7th of July, just looking at the Hansard, which is on page 41, I asked about the control mechanism for the local government. And I asked, does it fall within the ambit of the board? Is there a board that oversees the local government auditor? Mr. Donnelly says, no, it would not be explicit, Mr. Allister. Is it even implicit? Mr. Pitt has just told me they take nothing to do with that. Who does it? No one, I asked. And Mr. Donnelly says it would be better if there was a one-stop auditor for the entire system. And yet today, Mr. Allen has told us, oh, no, there is the same oversight. Both answers can't be right.
Well,
I'm satisfied that we proceed, but I just want to draw attention to that.
will we proceed on the basis we seek further clarification in relation to that, Mr. Alice, or would that be appropriate?
Might be good, yeah.
Okay, Clerk, is that okay? Yes?
Yes, that's grand.
Okay, thank you. Okay, if the committee is content that it has heard all the necessary evidence in this regard, with the exception of the point raised by Mr. Allister, the evidence will be collated and deliberations will commence at a future committee meeting. Okay, the Northern Ireland Assembly Commission budget, consideration of thresholds and committee input to in-year adjustments. Can I refer members to pages 50 to 68 of the meeting pack for the relevant papers? And can I remind you that this item was discussed briefly at the meeting on the 7th of July, but members agreed to defer further discussions until a later date. Can I ask the clerk to speak to this item, please?
Okay, the budget setting methodology for the Commission's budget, it specifically refers to the committee's input to in-year adjustments. And I'm just going to quote from it. It says, the submission of the Commission's contribution to monitoring rounds and the spring supplementary estimate will be subject to agreed thresholds between the Commission and the Committee. If these thresholds are not exceeded, the Commission will not seek the Audit Committee's view on its in-year position. So, in a briefing paper submitted by the Commission in September of last year, the Commission proposed that an in-year adjustment of plus or minus 10% of the Commission's agreed budget for that year should be brought to the Committee for its view. The Committee didn't respond to that proposal at the time, and the relevant extract from that briefing paper is at Appendix B, page 54. There was no rationale provided for the 10% figure. So to illustrate, the Commission's agreed budget for 21-22 was just over 51 million. So in this context, if it were to go with the Commission's, if the committee was to agree with the Commission's proposal, it would mean that an in-year adjustment of plus or minus 5.1 million does not need to be brought to the committee for its view. So at the meeting in November of last year, the committee commissioned research in relation to this, for comparative cases, Wales, Scotland, Republic of Ireland, etc. So the research didn't uncover any thresholds concerning in-year committee engagement, but it did discover a high level of variation in the budget processes, and specifically in relation to the legislatures in Wales and Scotland. They have corporate organisations similar to here, sort of functional alongside the legislature and independent remuneration arrangements, apologies. So if we look at Wales and Scotland, in Wales you've got the Senate, and the position there is if a supplementary budget is required, then the supplementary budget will be considered by the committee. If no supplementary budget is required, then a written report providing an explanation of any significant budget transfers is required. In Scotland, we have the Financial Scrutiny Unit. They provide a briefing to the Finance and Constitution Committee on proposed changes during each budget revision. And the Financial Scrutiny Unit briefing highlights movements that exceed 5 million. So really the committee is being asked to consider the proposal by the Commission of the 10% plus or minus of its agreed budget, or any other views they may have in relation to thresholds.
Okay, thank you very much, Clerk, for speaking to that for us. No doubt there'll be some views on this. Mr. Irwin?
Yes, well, 10%, I think it was pointed out at the last meeting, is a sizable sum into several millions. So there would be maybe some concerns in around that. The percentage-wise, probably we would like to see it reduced, yeah.
Yeah, okay. Mr. Chambers? Yeah, Alan, you're on mute, sorry.
There we go. Thanks, Chairman. Yes, I would agree with that. I think, you don't mind a little bit of wriggle room within budget, and it's never an exact science. But I think 10% is just pushing the boat out a little bit too far in terms of wriggle room. So, yeah, I would have concerns around that figure.
Mr. Allister?
Absolutely agree. I think we'd be failing in our duty if we agreed to a situation where £5 million adjustment could be made and we never knew anything about it. My goodness, what are we here for? So I think 10% is way over the top. I would have thought 2.5% would be more like it. That would still give them wriggle room of over $1 million. But I think 10% is just incredible figure to suggest.
But I think on the back of those comments, it's what is this for? There's no indication or no detail. It's simply, please, sir, can we have some more? If there was some detail as to what this was for, maybe it could be at least explainable or to some degree justified. But even at that 10%, which is £5 million, it's a huge sum of money with no detail behind it. So I do have considerable difficulties with this as well. So I think on that basis, given the remarks by members, I think it is appropriate entirely in the interests of looking after the public's money that we ask the Commission to provide a detailed rationale for the 10% threshold proposed and for an assessment of the level of accountability this provides in relation to its particular budget. Would members be agreed?
Agreed.
Okay. Can I inform members that a letter on that basis will be issued to the Assembly Commission advising of this committee's position and seeking the Commission's view? If that is agreeable by members, yes?
Agreed.
Okay. Thanks very much. Just briefly on that other point, this committee also earlier in this year, or last year, it was in the financial year, agreed for monies as well to be spent to upgrade the broadcasting systems, the television screens, the accessibility of the building, the disabled access to the building. And I'm sure members will agree I've seen nothing materialise from what was sought previously by way of investment in the infrastructure of the building that enables members to do their business in an efficient and effective way. So I think it's also appropriate that whilst we're writing that we seek an update in relation to those matters, if members is agreed.
Great.
Yeah, look, the internet seems to be as bad as ever in the building.
Yeah,
I think.
yeah. Okay, thank you. Okay, the annual report, the Northern Ireland Commission, can refer members to pages 70 to 161 of the meeting pack for the relevant papers, and advise you that included in the papers is a draft letter to the Speaker requesting further information and clarification on a number of issues arising from the annual report. This is to help the committee prepare for its scrutiny of the NIAC's draft budget. Can I ask if members wish to make any amendments to or additions to the draft letter as within your pack? So I'll give you a moment to look at it if you haven't, and happy for members to make any recommendations, or if not, all agreed?
Agreed.
Okay.
Yeah, I agree.
Okay, all happy, yes? Okay, thank you. Okay, and members are content for the letter to go as drafted to the Speaker. Okay, thank you. Okay, the annual report, the Northern Ireland Public Services Ombudsman, can refer members to pages 163 to 237 of the meeting pack for the relevant papers. Can I ask that the draft letter to NIPSO was also requesting further information, clarification on a number of issues arising from the annual report. If members wish to make any amendments or additions to the draft letter, please indicate. All agreed?
Great.
Good.
Members content for it to be sent as well to NIPSO, yes?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Item of business members, the annual report of the Northern Ireland Audit Office, refer members to pages 239 to 349 of the meeting pack for relevant papers. And again, can I ask if you're content that a draft letter to the NIAO was included requesting further information, clarification on a number of issues arising from the annual report? Any members have any amendments or additions to the draft letter, or are you content to proceed?
Yeah. It's okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Mr. Irwin, yeah?
Okay.
Okay. Members content the letter will be sent forward to the NIAO. Okay, next item of business members, October 2021 monitoring round. Can I refer you to pages 351 and 352 of the meeting pack for the relevant papers? Can I inform you that departments and bodies are due to submit their October monitoring round returns to the Department of Finance by the 1st of October, which is a few days' time. In advance of that, the committee requested details of the proposed returns for NIPSO, NIAC and the NIAO. The NIPSO does not anticipate making any surrenders or bids. The NIAC has indicated at an official level that its monitoring round return will be well within plus or minus 10% of its annual budget, and the NIAO anticipates making a surrender of £300,000 due to its full year staffing complement remaining less than had been anticipated, resulting in savings on forecasted salaries. The surrender also includes savings made as a result of its pay reward from the 1st of April 2021 being consistent with the NI Civil Service, which was a 1% revalorisation increase. Can I ask members that are content to note?
Yeah. Great.
Okay.
Okay, thank you, members. Next item of business is the draft scrutiny timetable, budget 22 to 25. Can I refer you to pages 354 and 363 of the meeting pack for relevant papers, and in particular the draft budget scrutiny timetables at pages 356 and 357. Can I remind you that the Audit Committee has a role in scrutinising and agreeing the budgets for the Northern Ireland Audit Office, the Northern Ireland Public Service Ombudsman and the Northern Ireland Assembly Commission. The Minister for Finance has not yet informed the Committee of the Executive's timetable for the upcoming budget exercise. However, it is expected that the spending review will be announced on the 27th of October 2021. Can I inform you all that It is important that the Audit Committee scrutiny processes ahead of the Executive's process is enabled to the Committee's position on the budget of the three bodies to be reflected in the Executive's draft and final budget documents. If members are content with the budget scrutiny timetable and for the necessary actions to be progressed by the Committee office, can you indicate so? All agreed, or any concerns?
Good.
Right. Okay. Okay, members, I just want to highlight that depending on the Department of Finance budget timetable, there may be a need to schedule additional meetings or a change meeting dates to accommodate budget scrutiny. But again, we'll look at that going forward if members are okay with that. Yes?
Yeah.
Okay, the next item of business, the appointment of the NIAO chairman and the non-executive directors. Can I refer members to pages 365 and 366 of the meeting pack for the relevant papers. And can I inform you that Rodney Allen, who we've just heard from, the director of the NIAO, has written to the committee in relation to extending the terms of the current non-executive members of the NIAO Advisory Board. The current memorandum of understanding provides for an extension of appointments for a maximum of a further 3 years with the endorsement of this committee. Can advise members that the current non-executive members of the Audit Office Advisory Board were appointed on a 3-year term and that the chairman's term ends on the 1st of December 21 and the other 3 members on the 1st of April 2022. While the chair and 2 of the independent members have indicated they are willing to undertake a further term if agreed, one of the members does not want to be considered for the further term. Can I ask members for their views on the extension of the appointments for the chair and the 2 members as outlined? I'll go with Mr. Irwin first of all, or any member that indicates otherwise.
I suppose the extension is for a period of today's April, is that right? So it brings it to the end of this mandate, is that right? Am I wrong or right in that?
You broke off there slightly.
Is it for next 3 years or is it for next, or what is the extra period, did you say again?
So the extra 3 years, chairman's term ends on the 1st of December 21, so the extra 3 years will take it to the December 24, and the other 3 members on the 1st of April 2022, which will take them up to April 25.
Well, I suppose I'm not the expert on this one, so probably we probably could live with that, I'm sure. And at this stage, I have no reason to doubt that it's above board.
Yeah, my view of it lies that there's been a 3-year term served. I don't see the issue with a further 3-year term, but it will be up to members if they have any particular concern or different view on it. But my view of it would be as yours is, William, that I have no particular concerns about it and I'm happy enough. Alan?
Yeah, would it not be, I mean, I have no great view on it one way or the other, but would it not be more healthy in terms of to maybe extend it for a year and give those coming in to the Assembly under the new mandate to make a decision because it will reflect more on the new mandate than it will in this current mandate. So a year might be more healthy. But as I say, I wouldn't be falling out with anyone over it, Mr. Chairman.
I can understand that. However, if I can be blunt about my concern in relation to it, the Assembly isn't exactly standing on solid ground at present, and we won't know what lies ahead within the next year. Therefore, my concern would be to ensure that there is continuity of sorts and that a 3-year term would be probably more appropriate than a 1-year term, given the situation we're in. And that's probably why the main core reason for my view being that I would prefer to see a 3-year term. But I take on board what you're saying, Alan. Yeah. Jim?
I think that you do reflect your concerns about the foundations of the Assembly. You know, in a sense, I suppose, we are creating a bit of a precedent, you know, that we're recognising that a whole lot of things then should be just arbitrarily extended to accommodate the possibility of there being no Assembly. But as just to say,
the Memorandum of Understanding provides for an extension of appointments for a maximum of a further 3 years with the endorsement of this committee. So we need to see how solidly the endorsement is in terms of, how much power has the committee over agreeing or not agreeing with this, and where does it sit. But I take your point, Alan, as well. Mr. Alistair?
I must say I very much agree with Alan. I think that for two reasons. One, that if there's to be a new assembly, we shouldn't be gazumping what might be their function. But secondly, we're going into a review of the oversight of these bodies. And I'm anticipating there will be change to that within the 3 years, I would have hoped. So it seems to me a bit futile if we're going to recommend that an independent board, for example, that we should simply nod through a board that the auditor himself appoints. Like, that was the whole point of much of our discussion, that the oversight of the audit office is by a hand-picked chairman, by the auditor himself, and a hand-picked board. Now, if we're going to try and change that, why on earth would we underwrite that for another 3 years? That just doesn't add up in my mind. So that's why I think 1 year is more than enough.
I don't believe that the process will be completed within a year either, Mr. Alistair, so there will be further...
We could review it again, but certainly if we give 3 years, there's no urgency then about addressing it. Surely it would be completed within 3 years.
Well, if we were to increase it if we were to agree and endorse the 3-year period, should it not be subject to any potential changes that are suggested under this review?
Well, these are in some way remunerated posts, are they not?
Yeah, well, I'm not quite sure. I think they are, yes. Clerk...
So if they're brought to an end, there would be some sort of compensation. So why would we bring that upon ourselves?
Clerk, have you any advice on this matter as to what power the committee has to recommend a lesser period than the 3 years, if that is so the will of this committee?
I mean, the committee, the extension is with the endorsement of the committee, so if the committee has concerns, there's no reason why, you can't bring an official from the audit office to perhaps outline further or to go into more detail on the reasons for doing it this way. Otherwise, there's no reason why you can't set up to a maximum of 3 years. If you feel that 1 year is appropriate, then subject to review. There's no reason why you can't express that view to the audit office.
Chair, could I point out, that's a view expressed by Mr. Allen himself in his letter.
Yeah.
He says there would, however, be strength and extensions for at least a year in the first instance to provide continuity in board membership following the Audit General retirement. So, his expectation even is that we may not be happy with more than a year. So why, if they're anticipating for at least a year, why should we go beyond that in these circumstances?
Chairman, just taking up Mr. Alistair's view there about the potential that we could be walking into having to compensate people that we're going to cut their contractual term short. Is it not always easier to extend something than to draw it back? So even if the report is going to take more than a year to come back, the committee can, at its discretion, this committee can, at its discretion, extend up to a maximum of 3 years. So it's well within our gift to extend a contract for 6 months, 9 months, a year. So if coming towards the end of the year extension, it comes back to us and say, look, the report's still another 3 months out, well then we can extend it for 6 months. But as I say, it's easier to extend it going forward than it is to draw it back with the potential of compensation in the wind.
Yes. I've taken your points on board. I'm not sure, Mr. Irwin, is your position still that you wish?
I'm open-minded on it. I think there is some merit in what both the other two members do say, if we extend for 1 year, it probably gives us some cover in relation to, that could be extended at any stage where the 3 years could pose a problem maybe in the future if that had changed.
I think there'll be other problems here because there is a vacancy coming in terms of one of the positions because they're not seeking a further term. So does that mean that the post is advertised for a year only? Because that would be very difficult in attracting the appropriate person to that particularly important post. And the same for the remaining members on that, if it's only a year. Why would they extend? Why would they continue if that's the case? Therefore, it would leave a considerable issue. It would add to a considerable problem. So my concern is my view of this would be extend the positions for a year subject to review after the year, but not ceasing it at the year. So it's a 3-year period. But I still think this is going to be difficult in terms of for any advertisement to fill that vacancy for a year.
Are they public appointments?
Claire, can you confirm? I'm just working out what way.
I'm not actually clear on the status of those appointments, apart from I know that they're appointed by the CNAG.
Mr. Chairman, maybe we should take some advice on this, just to be clarifying the situation. Yes,
Clerk, I think Mr. Irwin is right. I think it's important that we consider this because I don't want to make a decision around extending for a year and then having difficulty in filling the gap, as will be the case, because there is one member that is not going forward and others that are seeking to go forward for a second term if it is so granted. But I think we should seek information as to the appointment process of the positions. Remuneration, as Mr. Allister has sought to seek clarification on for those positions, whether they aren't, and also if it was only extended by a year, what potential issues could arise in finding people for the relevant position.
Okay.
You see, Chair, the penultimate sentence of Mr. Allen's letter says, I will then liaise further with the committee about an appointment process for the position currently occupied by Noel Hindman. So that suggests to me there isn't a process. My understanding of these posts were they were handpicked by the Auditor General. He handpicked the chairman. I don't think there ever was a public appointment process. So if it's a question of him picking somebody else for 1 year rather than 3, it's not really an issue, is it?
I'm not sure it would be as crude as handpicking. I'm sure there's a process that has been followed that is entirely fair and appropriate.
Well, again, I think when we go back to the Hansard of last month, or July, it was almost as crude as that.
Well, we can seek clarification on that process, Mr. Allister. We can return to this as well. If this is up in December, this will have to be reviewed at the next meeting. Clerk, and just for point of clarification, when is our next meeting?
Our next meeting is on the 3rd of November, where we will be taking evidence from the 3 bodies in relation to their spending plans for the next budget period.
Can we slot this particular item in there as well, Chair, or Clerk, just to get some clarification?
Well, we could slot it in. It wouldn't be a huge slot, but if we get the written evidence or the written information in advance, we should be at the point then where you're just asking those pertinent questions to allow you to make your decision.
Well, there's another challenge here because the current memorandum of understanding provides for an extension of appointments for a maximum of 3 years. That's what we're discussing. But there is a vacancy. There is going to be an advertisement for that vacancy, and that vacancy will be for a period of 3 years. That would my understanding. Would that be? Would you read that the same way, members?
Well, we don't make that.
The extension. Sorry, Mr. We're discussing the extension, and that extension so for an endorsement for a further 3-year period. But there is a vacancy which will need to be advertised, an appointment will need to be made and post filled. That'll be for a 3-year period. So we'll have one person there potentially for a 3-year period, and then the others will be reviewed after 1.
Well, why do we say it would be for a 3-year period?
Well, I'm assuming, and this is where we need to get clarification, I'm assuming that is within the gift of those responsible for the process of appointing these people.
Yeah, they might decide that's going to be 1 year, could they? I don't think it's compulsion that it's 3 years.
Again,
Yeah,
that would,
let's
I
get
think-
clarification on that.
Yeah, I would have concerns that there would be difficulty in appointing a person for a post that is only a year, and there's uncertainty about the future of that post beyond that year. In terms of the role, regardless of opinions on it, it's far better that it is filled than unfilled at the present time. Okay, members, so we'll seek those clarifications. Clerk, are you clear as to what we're seeking? Yes?
Yes, that's grand.
Okay, thank you, members. Next item, business scrutiny schedule. Can I refer members to pages 368 and 370 of the meeting pack for the scrutiny schedule? Can I remind you that the committee had agreed to consider the salary of the CNAG during this mandate? I know it has been some time since there has been such considerations. Can I inform the committee to inform the committee consideration of this matter? Can I ask members if they are content to commission research on the background to the current salary arrangements of the Controller and Auditor Generals and the salary arrangements for comparable cases? So in other words, we go compare to see what's happening in other jurisdictions in relation to the salary of the CNAG, and then we have a report back and make a decision as to what the appropriate course forward is. If members are all agreed?
Right.
Okay, so members are agreed to are content to note the scrutiny schedule. Okay. Next item of business. Members, as correspondence, can inform you that there are 3 items of correspondence at page 372 to 486 of the meeting pack. Item 1 at page 372 is a copy of correspondence from the Controller and Auditor General to the Speaker advising that he intends to retire from his position at the end of March 2022. Can I remind members that one of the committee's considerations as part of its review relates to the tenure of the Controller and Auditor General. Can I ask the Clerk to speak to this item, please?
Okay, so under current legislation, the CNAG has no fixed term, but must retire at the age of 65, retire from the post. And as the Chair has reminded members, as part of the committee's review, one of the considerations relates to the tenure of the CNAG. So, based on the evidence received as part of the review, the committee is likely to consider whether it wishes to recommend limiting the tenure to a non-renewable term of between 8 and 10 years. Now, no decision has been taken by the committee on that, but it is one of the considerations. So the Audit Committee isn't likely to report to the Assembly until early 22. However, should the committee make a recommendation to limit the tenure, as I've just outlined, and remove that compulsory retirement age, and of course if it's approved by the Assembly, arrangements to recruit the next CNAG will have already commenced. I've contacted HR and they've told me that they would need to start advertising in mid-October. So from looking into this, I'm suggesting that advice is requested on the options for providing that the next CNAG is recruited on a non-renewable term of between that 8 and 10 years, and obviously with the compulsory retirement age removed. So there is going to need to be legislative change to make that happen. So really the advice should be around whether could that be best done via an act of the UK Parliament or an act of the Assembly with the consent of the Secretary of State. So given the time pressures as outlined in relation to the recruitment, it might actually be useful at this stage to request advice on whether the post of the next CNAG could be advertised on the basis that it would be subject to retrospective effective legislation, and to get some idea of how well developed that legislation would need to be to allow HR to advertise on that basis. The other thing that struck me was when something's probably missing here in terms of the committee's consideration of tenure. the recommendations that we have received have been talked between 8 and 10 years. Now, 10 years is the tenure of the CNAG in England. Scotland, Wales is 8 years. So it might also be worthwhile at this point going out to the chairs of the statutory boards and asking for their views on how appropriate their tenure for the CNAG, whether that's 8 years or 10 years, you know, and how that works in practice.
Okay. Members, any thoughts on what the clerk has said?
Sure, I think retrospective legislation is always very tricky.
Yeah.
Not an easy subject, but surely the burden of the evidence we got from Scotland, England and Wales was endorsement of a fixed term. That was their practice and they seemed to think that worked well.
That's right.
Was it not?
They endorsed the non-renewable term of 8 to 10 years. Between 8 and 10 years, it was just that one had 10 years, the other two had 8 years. And if the committee is looking to, you know, say the committee was to recommend the limited tenure, you might want to consider putting in a tenure of, you know, 8 years or 10 years, or whether you want to leave it as loose as between 8 and 10 years, and whoever's then drafting the legislation or consulting on the legislation does the work at that stage.
Yes.
I suppose it could be 8 years with a possible extension up to 10, I suppose.
Yes. That's what would be, well, you know, there'll need to be some certainty around that. 10 is probably the furthest point of the scale, anyway.
Yeah.
Is there somewhere that is 9 years? Is it Wales?
No, they're 8 years. Scotland and Wales 8 years. England 10 years.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
But I think the key here is, you know, if we're talking about the retrospective effective legislation, is, you know, how well that legislation would need to be developed, you know, at what stage in its drafting or whatever, you know, to allow the post to be advertised on that basis. So, I mean, obviously it's legal advice that would give us an idea of that.
Yes. So what's the best course forward then to determine the tenure, whether it be 8 or 10? I think Jim's suggestion is actually quite a good one. 8 with an option to extend for 2 years, but that is it, you know, just...
The thing is, the committee doesn't need to make a decision on that at this stage, simply because whatever happens, a change like this requires legislation. So it's never going to be ready in time for the for HR to go out and recruit for the next CNAG, to allow them to be in post when the CNAG retires at the end of March 22.
Okay. Okay, so in the interim then, are members content to commission assembly legal advice as outlined by the clerk? Okay. And also, if members are in agreement, can we write to the chairs of the UK statutory boards to seek their views on how an 8-year and 10-year tenure works in practice and the appropriateness of the duration of the tenure? All agreed?
Okay.
I think we already have that answer, yeah.
So what would you say about this? And Jim, where do you think we're at?
Well, the evidence we received from the Scottish and Welsh people was that 8 to 10 worked very well. 8 years in their case.
Yeah, but we'll need to come to a final conclusion on whether it is 8, 9 or 10.
Yeah.
I think it'll make very little difference at the end of the day.
But that, in the end of the day, is only a decision that's enforceable once it's in legislation, isn't that right?
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So are we saying that we've no need to write to these boards because we already have that information? So rule that out?
Probably Jim's right in that order, yeah.
Yeah. Jim, are you trying to get in?
No, I think that's
Okay, so we don't need to go with that action. So the action as agreed is that we seek legal advice as outlined by the clerk in relation to the matters discussed. Okay, members are content to note the remaining items of correspondence. Yes.
Yeah, sure, I have to drop out from my finance committee.
Yeah, we're just finished here now, Mr. Alistair, very briefly. We'll be about 5 minutes if you want to hold off, or you can go and just looking to see
Well,
what's
I'll
in
go
front.
sit
Yeah,
for it. Okay,
okay,
thanks.
thank you.
The best.
Okay, members, can I refer you to pages 368 and 370? Sorry, I've already done that. Any other business is where we're at. So Mr. Albert could stay on. Have members any other business they'd like to raise? Well, I just have one thing I'd like to raise, if members would just indulge me for a slight moment. I've been looking at the membership of the committee and the numbers. So there's only 5 members of this committee. It is the smallest committee of the Assembly. And I have concerns about the difficulty given other demands that can arise from time to time in terms of the availability of a 5-member committee because of what is required for quorum and for decisions to be met, and also if it is appropriate for 2 members to be making decisions in relation to such matters if the other 3 are not available. I would like to seek out some information or guidance as to whether it would be possible to increase the membership of this committee further beyond the 5 to ensure that we have a stronger representation at the committee, particularly in the event that members are unavailable to attend, and also to ensure that we don't have a situation where it's down to 1 or 2 members, 2 members in particular, making decisions that may not reflect the wider sense of the general committee, which could happen very easily. I think there's no harm in exploring this if members are agreed, and we'll seek out with the clerk as to how best to proceed. Any thoughts on that?
Mr. Chairman, I'm not don't know the answer to this. You may do. Has this committee always had 5, or is that the way it's historically always been?
It's always had 5, but other committees like standards and privileges, so on and so forth, have 9 members. We're not quite sure as to why there is only 5 on this, but there's no reason as to why there should or there shouldn't be. But I think it is worth exploring to ensure that there's a wider representation at this committee. It is a scrutiny body. The function and role of this committee has expanded significantly, particularly in more recent times. I know members have expressed concern about the level of meetings that are now required, particularly subject to the review, and that doesn't even include the extra responsibilities that have been placed in this committee of late. So I think with that said, given the changing role and function of this committee in recent times, and also the importance of upholding the strongest levels of scrutiny of public finances, I think that there may be merit in exploring whether it is appropriate, given the role and function of this committee in its present state, whether 5 members is appropriate or whether there should be more on it.
Chairman, certainly when I agreed within my party to come on to the audit committee, it was sold to me that it would be about 3 meetings a year. That was the historical position, 3 or 4 meetings. And as you say, it really has taken on a life of its own now, and the number of commitments and meetings have increased quite dramatically. And it does put you under a little bit of pressure when you realise that, some other committees with 9 members, if you can't make it, it's not the end of the world for the committee. The business of the committee can still go on, and your party still will have maybe representation on it and so forth if you're not there. But with this committee, you do feel a greater sense of responsibility. If for some reason you can't get to the meeting, you do realise that it may not be quorum, and that's not a healthy situation. For either the admin staff trying to hold the whole thing together, or for yourself as chair trying to conduct the business. So yes, I don't know what the procedures are for who actually would make that call, but obviously there's someone, maybe the speaker, I don't know, that we can make recommendations to. But I certainly wouldn't be adverse to increasing the membership of the committee. I think it would help us all going forward.
Okay, Clerk, have you any advice on that? Sorry, William, were you looking in there first? Yes?
Listen, I'm not hardly possible male, and I think that there is benefits in having a larger committee. Not sure there'll be many queuing up wanting to get onto that, but no matter.
We'll have to increase the salary for it, William, I think.
Clerk, have you any suggestion as to how we proceed?
Well, what I do following this meeting, I speak to the relevant people and sort of plot a course on how to raise this issue in the most appropriate way and get back to the committee then.
Yeah, I think at its core, this is about effective scrutiny of these bodies, and it is difficult to do that if there's only 2 members in attendance, which unfortunately due to other demanding commitments that we have. Like I sit on the Committee for Education, William, you're on another committee, as are you, Alan. Jim Allister, as you've just seen, has to go to Finance. So it takes very little disruption to cause considerable disruption to the work of this body. And I think on that basis, this is worth exploring, particularly given that we're having a review into other things as well. So I think it would do no harm that given the work load has trebled, and also that the demands of the committee has increased significantly, and that it is important work. I think it is important that we do consider this at this stage and seek out relevant advice where necessary.
Chairman, if you would share those cream buns with us, it might be an incentive to us to get to the meetings.
I was badly caught, but the local bakery, I have to say, looked after me very well.
Chairman, you were absolutely enjoying it, and I was full of envy when I saw you eating it.
I'll bring you them to Stormont, Alan. Okay, members, if you're all agreed on those actions, Clerk, you're okay with where things are at, yes?
Yes, that's fine.
Okay, the date, time and place of the next meeting, it'll take place on the 3rd of November as previously outlined by the Clerk in room 29 if members are turning up in person, or via Starleaf as we are today, and the meeting will take place at 12:40. So if members are agreed, the meeting is now adjourned. Thank you, Clerk, for your help today.
Thank you.
Room 29. This is the Northern Ireland